Hi, I'm Sarah, and you are about to watch me bake sourdough bread with every single step included, from taking your starter out of the refrigerator all the way to slicing through the first loaf of bread out of the oven, which I no longer have because we ate it all. So here is one of the loaves that will be featured, so you will see that soon. Before we get started, I do want to show you a couple of things that I think you need before you start baking sourdough bread. And those two things are a kitchen scale, $10 online. Everything is measured in grams, sometimes ounces. I really recommend that you grab one of these or borrow one from a friend. And the other thing that you really need is a cast iron Dutch oven. It can be non-enameled like this, or it can be enameled. That's fine as long as it can be in the oven up to 500 degrees. And that's really all that you need to get started. The recipe that we are making is low hydration, which means that the dough is going to be very easy to work with. It shouldn't be too sticky, it shouldn't give you too many problems. And also a very high starter recipe, which means that your bread is going to rise. You're going to get a nice rise on your bread and a beautiful poofy bowl of sourdough bread. So that's about it. I wish you happy baking and a beautiful crumb, and let's get started.
All right, good morning. I have taken my starter out of the refrigerator, let it warm up, and I have started my levain, or really that's just kind of growing your starter to make your bread. So I'm making a 3-loaf bowl with a high starter recipe, so I've measured out 8 ounces of starter into my container here. All right, so to my 8 ounces of starter, I've added 8 ounces of water and 8 ounces of flour. So my recipe just basically uses starter, so this would be considered the levain step in other recipes, and you would just add according to your recipe. And to do this, you can just hit tare, and it takes your skill down to 0. So then you can add in whatever your next ingredient is. So I added 8 ounces of starter, then I hit tare, I added 8 ounces of flour, hit tare, 8 ounces of water. Now I'm going to stir it up, and I'll show you that step next. Look, I'm going to show you this is how I keep my flour. Okay, I have mixed up my starter. I do have something that's called a Danish dough hook. It's really nice for dough. You can get them for $10 on Amazon or so. I really like that. So I've mixed up my starter. And now what I'm going to do is let it sit for the day. It is morning, so I'm going to let this grow throughout the day, and I'll get back to it tonight. You can also reverse it, so you can mix up your starter at night and get back to it in the morning. You'll see that on my container I do have marks with permanent marker to see when this doubles, because that's when I know that I'm ready to continue and make my dough. So right here is where my starter, is right now, and when it doubles, then I'll know it's time to continue. This mark over here is actually for something else, so it's not going to get all the way up there. Okay, so now I have my levains started, or my starters growing to make dough tonight, and now I have my little starter that's left. And this is exactly what you came home with. So you've got 4 ounces of starter, and here's what you're going to do to keep it alive. You're going to add 4 ounces of water and 4 ounces of flour, and that's really always the rule. For most starters, you might find recipes with high hydration or low hydration starters, but for the recipes I use, and for the most part, you're going to add equal parts. So I've got 4 ounces of starter in here. I'm going to add my 4 ounces of water. And that is fine. A little bit over, a little bit under is fine, especially for the starter, because it's all going to grow together. And then I'm going to add my 4 ounces of flour. So about the same amount of flour and water there. I'm going to stir that up, and then this will double within the day, within a few hours. Today it's a pretty active starter, and once it is doubled, it's ready to be used in a recipe. So that's basically what these guys are doing back here. They're doubling, and then I will use them in a recipe. So this one I could leave out, let it double, and use it right away. However, I'm going to mix it up and put it right into my refrigerator. That's going to halt the growing process and allow it to save for a while. It saves for at least a week, usually more. So, all right, these have been going for about 10 hours, and they are about ready. They have just about doubled. Yum, bubbly and active. I'm ready to move on. Okay, I've got my starter that you can see has grown. It's nice and bubbly and wonderful. So now I'm going to add my water and flour and mix it up for an autolyse. We're going to let it all soak in together before we really start kneading it. All right, so I'm setting my food scale to grams. I measure the flour and water in grams for this part. And I'm going to add 900 grams of bread flour. I buy high gluten flour in bulk. You can also buy like King Arthur bread flour in 5-pound bags at any grocery store. So it's a little bit of a higher protein content. It gives it that nice chew. All right, I got too much. I have 912 grams. Doesn't have to be exact. Sometimes it's kind of fun to get it exact. A gram is not very much. I'm going to add 130 grams of whole wheat flour. This is just King Arthur whole wheat flour. 130 grams. Oops, I forgot to do my tare weight, so that's okay. I can add up to 1,030 grams of flour are in there. All right, my tare weight, and I'm going to add 550 grams of water. I will add more in a later step. All right, 550 grams of water. So close. Beautiful. 550. Okay. Now, all these beautiful layers here. Now I'm going to use this Danish dough whisk or Danish dough hook to mix this all together. Get way down there, get all of my starter incorporated, and that's going to take a little while. Let's see if I can kind of show you. As I'm doing this, really want to make sure I'm scraping around the bottom. And this is not going to come together perfectly. It's going to be usually described as a shaggy dough. So that's what we're trying to get here. It does get hard, so you can find a friend to help. If you don't have a Danish dough whisk, that's okay. You can use a big spoon. You can definitely wash and use your hands. It is very sticky though. It will stick to your hands at this point. Okay, so what we're going to do now is this is probably about good enough. The autolyse just allows it allows the flour to absorb the water. Some recipes will have you do an autolyse
with no starter, just the flour and the water, and then you add in the starter later. Okay, I'm gonna go grab my salt and show you what I'll do next. Okay, last thing before we let this sit for a 20-minute autolyse, I'm going to dissolve some salt in some very hot water so that it incorporates all throughout the bread really nicely. So this is extra fine salt. It just helps it to dissolve. And I always buy pink salt because I don't know why you buy anything else when pink salt's available. I'm putting 25 grams of salt in this little dish. And then I have super hot water here, and I'm going to pour 45 grams of very hot water. And it'll have time to cool down before it gets mixed in with that beautiful dough. All right, 5. Ooh, can you see the steam? No, not really. It's very pretty. All right, so I'm just gonna give that a little stir. It's okay, there's gonna be some in the bottom. This is just gonna help incorporate it when we're ready. And here's what I do. I put my lid on my bread and I put the salt right on top because I've forgotten to put the salt in before, and the bread is really gross if you forget the salt. So now I'm gonna set a timer for 20 minutes. In 20 minutes I will come back, add in the salt, and we'll start our stretch and folds. These containers that I have, just a quick note, I got these at Smart & Final. You can buy them in the bakery aisle there, in the flour aisle rather. And they're really nice because it's easy to see when your dough has doubled. So that's why I use these. Also has this nice lid that will fit nice and tight when we put it in the refrigerator, so no wasting plastic wrap or anything like that. Okay, so 20 minutes, autolyse, and we will come back and start our stretch and folds. Okay, now we are really going to get our dough put together. It's been 20 minutes. You can see that the dough has changed even in those 20 minutes, and every time we come back it will be a little bit different. I didn't mention earlier that with my starter, when we started off this morning, added 8 ounces of starter, 8 ounces of flour, 8 ounces of water, and mixed it up. It was about 10 or 11 hours between when I mixed it and then when I started adding all the ingredients. Probably a little bit long, like I said, this is a very active starter, but it'll be fine because it will feed on the new flour as well. All right, so I've got my salt that's been soaking. I'm gonna pour this over the top, make sure we get all the salt in there. And now, there's really nothing for it, but just to mix it in there with your hands. Of course, I've washed my hands really well. I've taken off all my jewelry. And you'll be able to feel, this is why we did the autolyse, because all of the flour and water has had time to soak in together. It's really not a super sticky dough anymore. You can kind of see got the blob here. So all I'm doing right now, my goal is just to get the salt really incorporated in here. And what we're gonna do next, we're gonna let this sit for 20 minutes. We're gonna come back and do some wet hand stretch and folds. So you'll see how all of that goes in 20 minutes. But this is probably good for now. It's just this lovely sort of lumpy dough that will sit here and wait for us. So that's what we've got right now. Okay, it's been 20 minutes. Here's our dough now, and it is time for our first stretch and fold. I've washed my hands and I've actually left them wet. So all you're going to do is take up part of your dough, stretch it, and fold it over. Turn. Do it again on this side. Over here. And do it one more time. And this timed stretch and fold process is taking the place of kneading. So really what you need is either lots of contact and mixing, kneading, or
where you can let time do it for you, and it really does develop a really nice flavor that way. And a nice texture. So there it is. I've done my 4 stretch and folds, and I'm going to do this a few times. I'm going to let it sit, and I'll come back in 20 minutes to do it again. That's just, again, helping to develop those protein bonds, develop the flavor, make that really nice texture that we know as sourdough. Okay, we've got our second stretch and fold, and I realized my hand was kind of in the way last time, so I'm going to try to fix that. So I'm just going to come stretch up and fold over. Sorry, I'm going to front so you can see. Stretch up and fold over 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, the dough feels so different. It's all coming together. The yeast are nice and happy. Up and then fold over. This side. Up, fold over. And again. Okay, we'll do this at least 1 more time, maybe 2. It's really feeling nice though. When it kind of feels spongy, it's all together, it's not sticky, then it will be ready to do its rise. So at least 1 more time, probably 2 more times of our stretch and fold, and then we'll be ready for the bulk rise. Alright, I'm going to do my last stretch and fold for the evening here. Dough is looking beautiful, it's very spongy and Play-Doh-y. So I'm just going to do my 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks great. You know, you might need another stretch and fold or 2 even. You're really just looking for a beautiful, spongy, Play-Doh-y texture. And a lot of things can affect your dough. The temperature in your room, the humidity, definitely the recipe. This is a low hydration dough, so it's pretty easy to work with and it'll come together nicely. Alright, so this is, I'm done stretching and folding, and now it's just time for the bulk rise. So I can see here that I'm at about the 2 liter, 2 quart line. And really what I'm looking for now is just for this to double, and then I'll stick it in the fridge for the night so it will stop growing and develop some beautiful flavor, and then I'll work with it again in the morning. So that's it. We'll come back in a couple hours, maybe 2, 3 hours. We'll hope to see some beautiful growth. And yeah, I'll show you that then. Alright, I'm very tired, so I'm going to put this in the refrigerator and go to bed. It's about doubled. It will continue to grow a little bit as it cools down in the fridge. This will be fine. If you wanted to start shaping this into loaves right now, you can. It doesn't have to go through the refrigerator. It can absolutely be shaped into loaves right now. That'll be the very next step. I'll be doing it after pulling it out of the fridge, but it's ready to go. You could have bread within a few hours from this point. It needs to be shaped and nice in a loaf. Cool. That'll be next. I'm very tired though, so no baking for me tonight. Just straight into the fridge with this. And again, that does help with the flavor. It just gets that nice fermenty, yummy sourdough tang. We love it. Good night. Okay, but before we go to bed, I will show you the top of these, because that's kind of nice. I do have this other one going as well, but I haven't been shown. But you can see that there's some beautiful activity. We've got some little bubbles down here. Alright. It is time to take my dough out of the fridge. You can see it has risen a little bit more. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't get to this morning, so this has actually been in the fridge for probably almost like 20 hours. It's been in there for a long time. And while it's in there, it's just developing great flavor. Out. So right now what I'm going to do is let it be here, sit on the counter, come to room temperature for 1 to 2 hours. Okay, we are ready to make our bowls. We've got enough dough here for 3 loaves.
so here's what I'm using. I've got my dough, which you can see has risen even more. It's been almost 2 hours, an hour and 45 minutes since I took this out of the refrigerator, so you can see that it is warming up. It's risen. I've got a dough scraper. It's going to be helpful to cut this into the 3 different loaves. I've got my scale because I do want to make sure that I have the correct amount of dough in each of my bowls. And I've got rice flour. This is great. There's no gluten, so it does not stick, and it doesn't. When it gets wet with all of the dough, it doesn't stick, and it really makes a nice, easy way to handle the dough, and also doesn't affect the flour ratio in our dough. All right. Yeah. Very beautiful. You can see it's all bubbly, lovely. And I have a nice clean countertop here, so I'm just going to sprinkle some rice flour right on my countertop. You can also use a silpat mat for this. It's a great place to work with dough. A silicone mat you can order online or get in the store. All right, and I'm going to take this and dump it all onto the counter. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. You can smell, it smells very yeasty and fresh. Lots of great flavors. Okay, exciting. Ooh, look at this little bubble over here. Super fun. All right. So now I've got this monstrous mass of dough. And again, this recipe is going to make 3 loaves. I feel like as long as I'm dealing with, taking all the time to make everything rise and put it all together, might as well make a few while I'm at it. So I'm just going to eyeball this at first. I'm trying to cut this into 3 even pieces, even-ish. I can already tell that one's a little small. But this is what works for me. Eyeball it here, turn my scale on. This doesn't have to be perfect because again, a gram is not very much. That's a little bit over 800. That's almost 800. This is the little one. And this one is 700. So, I don't know if this is actually legal or not in the bread making world, but I just take a little bit. There, that's almost 750. That's gonna be just great. Okay. So these will be my 3 loaves or my 3 bowls, and here's what I'm going to do first. This is called a lamination. I'm going to spread it out kind of flat and fold it over like a letter, just like an envelope. Do that to each one, and this is a 20-minute step. So they will sit like this for 20 minutes, laminating. And this is my Frankenstein dough that I've pulled a little extra. Going to go in there just fine. All right, so there is that. I'm going to cover them with a linen towel, just to kind of keep the air off of them. And these are my linen towels that I always use, so you can see that there's flour already on there. All right. There they are, all tucked in, set a timer for 20 minutes. Okay, here are my loaves that have been laminated once. There are 6 here. I am doing 2 recipes, but we're just going through the steps for 1 right now. Now what I'm going to do is take my loaves, turn them the other way, and I'm going to laminate again. Just like this, just an envelope fold the other way. This is just getting the dough nice and incorporated. It's going to make it even all the way through. We're going to get a beautiful bottom crust. There we go. Now these are going to sit for 20 minutes. And the next time we'll go ahead and shape them into the rounds. Okay, we have just finished our second
lamination. So now what I'm going to do is shape the bowls for their initial shape to give them a little bit of tension, let them rest, and then we will get them ready for their rise. So I'm going to flip these back over, and now what I'm going to do is tuck everything under and make a nice round bun looking shape. You can work with it a little bit. See, I'm kind of pushing and pulling just to get this everything tucked under and build a lot of tension in the dough. You want the dough to have a lot of tension, so when the bubbles start to grow in the middle, you get that nice, some nice holes in your bread, and everything doesn't just flatten out. So that's going to be a lovely initial shaping there. And we'll just go through and do each one. Again, you can be doing this on a silpat mat, you can be doing this on your countertops. And you'll notice that my dough is really keeping its shape pretty nicely. That's because this is a very low hydration recipe. High hydration is all the rage. It makes very pretty bread. It is difficult to work with for your first, few tries. And this lower hydration also makes just a really nice sandwich bread. It holds up nicely. It's kind of like what you might buy to make your delicious sourdough sandwiches on. So that's why this dough is behaving so nicely for me. And there we go. We've got our 3 initially shaped bowls, and I'm just going to go ahead and cover those back up for 20 minutes. Okay, now I am ready to shape these beautiful loaves into bowls to rise. And I'll show you how I do that. I'm going to go ahead and put a topping on each of these just to show you how that goes. So the first topping I'm going to do is sesame seeds, and if you do want something on top of your bread, this is the time to do it, not later. I have just a regular bowl here that I'm going to use with a linen towel, and like I mentioned, my towels are already nicely floured, and I'm also using a topping, so that's going to be good enough. If you are using a new towel, then it would be a good idea to rub some rice flour into it, give it a little dusting, make sure that it's really kind of coated in flour. And again, I'm just using regular bowls here. I do have one proofing basket that's kind of exciting. And these come with kind of a little shower cap that goes over it. You can put the bread in, but I actually prefer to use the towels anyway, because then you can fold it over the top and it keeps everything dry. So, okay, so here's my first bowl. Can you see this one? Yeah. Great. I'm going to tuck everything under again, just reshape, give it a really nice, give it some nice tension, make it as round as I can, pushing and pulling. You can see how these other ones have kind of spread out, so I'm getting it back into this nice shape. And now I'm going to pick it up. Here are my sesame seeds that I'm going to top it in, and I'm going to turn it right upside down and just roll it around in these sesame seeds until the top gets nice and coated. It looks like part of my bowl is not being coated, so I'm just going to take a little bit of water and touch this part over here. So I really do want sesame seeds everywhere because they're so delicious. So just make sure that I get some sesame seeds adhered to the whole top. Okay. Again, very easy dough to work with, not like higher hydration recipes. If you are dealing with a higher hydration recipe, then this will be a lot trickier. Okay, here's my prepared bowl. Here's my sesame seed bread, and I'm putting it upside down in here. Get it nice and together. And then I'm just gonna fold the top over. That is it. And now this is ready to proof for 2 or 3 hours. We'll take a look in 2 hours and see how we're doing. I'm gonna repeat that process with everything, all these bowls here. I'm going to put Italian seasoning. I'm going to put poppy seeds on one. Another really popular one is this everything but the bagel seasoning. Do that on top. I thought this might be kind of good, this za'atar seasoning blend from Trader Joe's. So, okay, so that's it. So now we're just gonna finish up these guys, put them in my baskets. For the oblong basket, you can just, it's pretty easy. You just kind of shape it into an oblong. Give it some tension. Flip it upside down. All right, see you in 2 hours. Okay, I said 2 hours, but it has been 1 hour. Look at all of my lovely eclectic bowls lined up. I did a little check here on my bread, and this is called a poke test. I've got a little bit of flour on my finger, and I'm just going to give it a little poke and see how it comes right back. Not quite ready, but you can see there's still a little bit of an indentation, so I don't think this is going to take, these are going to take 3 hours. I think it's going to be closer to 2. That is something you kind of have to feel out. So anyway, so because it's been an hour, it's time to start my oven. So I'm going to preheat my oven to 500 degrees. There we go. All right, 500 degrees, and I already have my Dutch ovens in here to heat. I'm doing two at a time, so I'll be baking 2 bowls. The Dutch ovens with the lid on are in my oven, heating at 500 degrees for 1 hour. So we'll set this for an hour. And that's that. In 1 hour, we'll be ready to bake. And I will show how I score, turn them into the Dutch ovens, and hopefully we'll have some really delicious bread just a couple hours from now. Okay, now it is time to score and bake. Pretty exciting. Here we go. So when I touch my dough, looks pretty good. You can see that the bottom is split a little bit, but that's okay. Here is how I'm going to turn it out. Score it, bake. And I'm going to do 2 at a time because remember I preheated 2 Dutch ovens. All right, first thing we need is a square of parchment paper. I'm going to put that right over the top here. A cutting board, and then you just got to do it. Just give it a flip. Take this off. Okay, here's our lovely sesame seed. All right, I'm going to show 2 scores in this first bit. I've got my beautiful bread lane here that was given to me by a friend. I'm going to show you a classic easy score. It's just an X in the top. Wow, this is the first time I've used this bread lane. It's really nice. Okay, and don't worry if you can't see all of that. I'm going to pull it over here in a second. You can use anything to score. A razor blade is great. A really sharp razor blade like this is really nice. I used a craft knife for a while. You can use a sharp knife on your knife drawer. And here, that's all I did on top was just an X. Okay. All right, so that's the first one. I am working quickly because now they are not in their lovely bowl shapes anymore. All right, so that's a classic. And now I'm going to show another classic score. This is our oblong loaf. It's in a banneton. So we're going to try for what's called an ear. It makes kind of a ridge along the middle of the bread, and it's called an ear because when you, sorry, that's my dishwasher, because when you cut into the bread, it looks like a little bunny with its ear sticking back. Hopefully I'll be able to show you that. Okay. Oh, I did sesame seeds on this one too. Oh well, we'll do another one. Okay, so for to try to get my ear, I'm just going to do one slice along the side here. And I'm kind of angling my razor blade in, my bread lane. And then I'm just going to go back over that. Wow, this is really nice. Okay. That's that. I do not have a videographer today. That's all I did was just cut right there. So this next part's kind of tricky. I'm going to open up my oven. I'm going to use folded towels instead of pot holders because it gives a little bit more dexterity getting the lids off. Carefully remove the lids, place the bread in, and I will show you. So here they are. I've carefully placed them in. Now I'm going to replace the lids very carefully, and there they are. Lids on. Sorry about that. Of course, it's very hot, cast iron. So I'm trying to do this and not burn myself. Okay, now I'm going to turn my oven down to 450 degrees. And I'm going to bake these for 20 minutes with the lid on. Then we will take the lids off and bake for another 20 minutes and see what we got. For the rest of these lovely bowls here, I'm going to put them in the refrigerator. So this is the second step where you can actually pause. You can refrigerate these overnight, wake up in the morning, heat your oven, heat your Dutch ovens, and have fresh bread in the morning. Or you can do this, in the morning, refrigerate all day, and bake a fresh bowl at night. So you can refrigerate during the bulk rise, and you can refrigerate after proofing. So these are going to go all in the refrigerator right now. I'm probably going to bake 2 more tonight, and then I will wake up in the morning and bake the other 2. It's really helpful if you're afraid of scoring, if you're afraid of slashing your bread. Having it refrigerated, super helpful because the bread is the dough is not as jiggly, it's set a little bit more. So you can certainly, you don't have to bake any from room temperature. If you've got the time, you can refrigerate all of them. Easy. Okay, 20-minute timer went off. This is my favorite part, making bread. Now we get to have a first look and see what our bread looks like. Look at that. Oh, it's very beautiful. That's our X. Okay, let's see. This one back here. Oh wow. Oh dear. Well, it's in here. That's amazing. Really poofy. Alright, I gotta get this closed up again. Now, I'm actually gonna go ahead and put a pan under these just to kind of help with browning. There we go. There's our beautiful loaves. Because we're gonna bake them for another 20 minutes. Oops. With the lids off. Okay, very exciting. And then we will see our finished product and take them out and cut them open. Okay, I just pulled these beauties out of the oven. Really pretty. Nice rise. This is that ear I was talking about. This ridge right here. You can kind of see if you were to cut it down like a little bunny rabbit. Like this is its nose, and that's its ear. That one's a little bit thick, which is probably my scoring. Anyway, there they are. They're absolutely beautiful. They're gonna cool off a little bit, and then I'll slice into them. And we'll see what we've got. And I'm going to put the lid back on my Dutch ovens and put those back in the oven to preheat for a bit because I'm going to do 2 more tonight. There we go. We went from pulling our starter out of the refrigerator to having a couple of beautiful loaves of bread. Okay, let's take a look inside. I do recommend buying yourself a nice sharp knife because this bread is tough to cut. It is still warm. Oh, listen to that. Gorgeous. Look at that beautiful bread. So pretty. All right, let's see if I can get. Yeah, that's so pretty. Look at this beautiful bread. This is called the crumb. All of the different little holes. Oh, and here you can kind of see. Like I said, this one's a little funky, but you can see how we've got a little rabbit ear. See, here's the little rabbit nose, here's the ear, the tail. And that is really it. Get some fresh butter. I am pleased as punch. This is absolutely beautiful. All right, so I'm going to go get some fresh butter and I'm going to enjoy a slice of fresh sourdough bread.